Hello, my name is Tom, and in this video I will solve SquareCells puzzle number 21. Okay, we have a couple of group clues here. Let's mark them. And only from the group clues I can already see that this square has to be deleted because the group of 5 connected squares cannot touch the group of 7 connected squares. Okay, now I think that's all for the group clues. In this video I will not use my very systematical approach by going through the columns and the rows and the columns and the rows over and over again, because these puzzles by now become so big and so complex that it's just very tedious and time consuming to take this approach. It's easier to look into areas where you can see that you can do more directly instead of just like doing it systematically, as I said. So I will start off here with this clue. Actually, in this column we have one separate square at the bottom, which can only be this one, so I can delete these two squares. And in this row we also have a separate square at the end, so I also can delete this square. Now next I will look into this row here, because we have 4 connected squares, and since in this range of 4 connected squares we already have one square marked, that means we have to mark this one. Sorry. And we can now see that the group of 8 connected squares cannot touch the group of 2 connected squares, so I can delete this square too. Now the 4 connected squares at the beginning of this row can only be positioned like this, and we need another separate square here. That's here, so I can delete this square. Now looking into this clue here, we have 3 connected squares at the top of this column. That's 1, 2, 3, like this or like this. Couldn't move further here. Also this square was marked already, so these 2 squares definitely have to be marked. And I can also see that I need 2 more separate squares in this column, and we have 2 separate squares marked already, so I can separate them and delete all the other squares here. Now let's look into this row here. We have one separate square in the beginning, which is this one, so I can delete these 2 squares. And here I need 2 squares at the top, which can only be these 2 squares. Now I can also see that the group of 8 connected squares can't touch the group of 7 connected squares, so I can delete this square as well. And looking at this clue here, in this row I need another 2 connected squares. Now they cannot be positioned like this, because we will end up with a group of 3 connected squares, even though I can only have 2 squares connected. So this square can be deleted, and here, like this, we would also have a group of 3, which is too much, so I can also delete this square. Now the group of 2 connected squares can only be positioned like this, and since it's completed, we can delete these 2 squares. The next thing to do, or the next thing that I would do, is look into this row here, because we can in fact already see where this separate square has to be positioned. I will show you where it can't be positioned first. So let's assume the first separate square here in this row would be positioned here. Then we would need 2 connected squares here, and we would have 2 squares left only for 2 more separate squares, so that doesn't work. The first separate square can also not be positioned here, obviously, and it can't be positioned here too, because we need 2 connected squares, and we only have 1 here, so that also doesn't work. So the first separate square in this row has to be positioned here, and that in turn means that these 2 connected squares can only be completed like this. I can delete this square, and this one here is a separate square, so let's delete this square. Okay, now I can look into the columns again if I can deduce anything else. Not really here yet. Yes, let's look at the 3 connected squares here. They cannot be positioned like this, because we have 4 squares already, so let's delete this one. They could be positioned like this. Can they be positioned like this? No, because we have 2 groups of 4 with a total of 5 squares in them, so that doesn't work. Can the 3 connected squares be positioned like this? Also not, because I need another separate square at the bottom of this column, and I don't have the square for that. So the 3 connected squares can only be positioned like this. This also completes the group of 4 connected squares here, so I can delete these 2 squares. Now I can look into this column, or no, let's start actually with this one here. The group of, like here we have 2 connected squares in the beginning, like this. So the group of 4 connected squares can only move into this direction. This one has to be a separate square, because even if we had a separate square here, there would be another separate square here. So let's delete this square, unmark this one, and the group of 4 connected squares can only be completed like this. We can delete this square now. And now let's look into this row. We have 1, 2, 3 separate squares plus 3 separate squares. That equals 6 squares, and we need 3 gaps, 1, 2, 3. So we need 9 squares minimum to put these clues into the row, and we have 9 squares left here. So I can mark this column like this already, this row like this already, and it is completed. We can delete the gaps like this. Now I think it's time to look at the column clues again. Yes, here, as I can see now, we have 3 connected squares already, so I can delete this one. This hint or this clue doesn't help. This clue does help, because we have in the start, like at the top, a separate square which is here, and then 3 connected squares which can only be positioned like this or like this. So I can delete this square. Looking into this column now, we have 2 connected squares up here and another 2 connected squares here like this. So I can delete this square. Now here in this column we need 3 connected squares at the top, so I can delete this square. 1 gap, 1, 2, 3. I can also mark this one, because again we need 1 separate square and 3 connected squares that can only be positioned like this. 1 gap, 1, 2, 3, or from this side 1, 2, 3, right? So these 2 are definitely part of the solution. Here I can delete this square quickly. Here I can delete this square quickly, but here I can't do anything yet. So let's look into this row here, because we can only have separate squares. I can delete this square. And here this row actually is complete already. I see that now. We have 2 squares like this, and 1 separate square and 1 separate square there, so I can delete these squares. And now I can complete the 3 connected squares in this column, 1, 2, 3, and that also completes the group of 7 connected squares here, so I can delete this square and I can delete this square. Now here in this row we have 1 separate square in the beginning and 2 connected squares here already, so this square can be deleted, and the final square here also has to be marked because we need 1 separate square there. Let's see, what else can we do? Yes, in this column we need 5 connected squares, and I only have 5 squares left, so I can mark this one, and we have completed the group of 8 connected squares. I can delete this square now. Here in this column we need 3 connected squares. They can only be positioned here, 1, 2, 3. So looking at this clue here, we need 2 connected squares in this row. They can only be positioned like this, and this also completes the group of 5 connected squares, so I can delete this square and this square. Now looking into this column here, we need 1 separate square and 3 connected squares. The separate square obviously isn't here, it has to be here. This is part of the 3 connected squares like this. We can delete this one, and here in this column we only have separate squares, so I can delete this square as well. Let's see, what else have I got here. I don't want to go into this row, it's a bit too complicated for my taste. So let's start off with this one here. We have 3 connected squares here, which can only be positioned like this or like this. So these 2 squares have to be marked. Now I can also conclude something for this column here, because we have 1 separate square left in this row that's either positioned here or there, and that means for our group of 5 connected squares we can only have 4 connected squares in this section. So we need one more square here for sure, like this. So we can complete this column, because we have 3 connected squares here already. I can delete this square, and we can mark this one according to this clue here. And this completes the group of 5 connected squares, and I can delete this square. So now I need 3 separate squares here in the beginning. 1, 2, 3. We can't have one here, so the third one has to be here. And in this column, this also has to be a separate square, so I can delete this square. In this column, we need 1 separate square at the bottom, so let's put one there. According to this clue, it's also a separate square in the row. We can delete this square. That means we need 1 more separate square here, which can only be there. And we have 3 connected squares. In this row, I can delete this square now. And we need 1 more separate square in this row, which can only be here, which completes the sequence of 3 connected squares for this column. So I can delete this square, and I only have to mark 1 more square here, and the puzzle is complete. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed me solving this puzzle, and I hope to see you again in my next video when I will solve puzzle number 22. Bye!